For many urban dwellers, waking up for another workday meant hastily getting up, brushing our teeth, perhaps a quick shower, and even a quicker bite for breakfast, and a cup of coffee to kickstart everything. Then it's off to some form of public transportation to get to our final destination, work. Some of us will take buses, some of us will take subways, and some will take an elevated train. Many will take a combination of these modes of mass transportation in order to get to our final destination. Now, modern public mass transportation like a subway might not be luxurious. Smell of urine and vomit may be lingering in the air from last night's indulgences, or perhaps there's some vulgar graffiti on torn seats and grimy walls of the subway. But compared to horse-drawn mass transportation used in urban cities in the 19th century, modern buses, subways, and elevated trains would be like dining in Versailles. For much of the 19th century, for many urban dwellers, walking was the prime mode of transportation, as private horses were too costly to feed and house. Widespread adoption of automobile was still off in the future. Many workers lived close to their place of employment, and many urban cities were circular in shape. With the advent of commuter steam railroads powered by steam engines, urban dwellers could live further away from the city's core, and many urban dwellers chose to do so in order to escape the daily hustle and bustle of the city life. However, as great as the commuter steam railroads were, there were a couple limiting factors that prevented commuter steam railroads from being used extensively for intercity travel. These commuter trains produced lots of noise, thick smoke, and threw out embers that could light a spark and torch the entire city. Also, these commuter trains were so heavy that their weight would shake the city's foundation and crack street pavements. So, for intercity travel in the middle of the 19th century, many urban dwellers depended on horses. Horse-drawn carriages has been around for centuries, but horse-drawn carriages are mainly for personal use. A natural evolution of the horse-drawn carriage adapted for mass public transportation was the horse-drawn omnibus, which debuted for public service in Paris in 1828. Horse-drawn omnibus service quickly spread to London in 1832, and in 1833 the horse-drawn omnibus could be seen hauling passengers throughout New York City, and by the 1850s, most large and medium-sized cities in Northeast and Midwest America had omnibus services. By 1853, entrepreneur Jacob Sharp counted 3,100 omnibuses crisscrossing Chambers Street on Broadway within 13 hours, or one in every 15 seconds. However, the horse-drawn omnibus wasn't without its drawbacks. For one, the omnibuses can barely count as mass transportation as they could only transport about a dozen passengers, and muddy urban streets were less than ideal places for horse-drawn transportation. 3 horses were typically required to transport 10 passengers due to the muddy conditions and the friction that resulted. And that's when everything was going smoothly. If there was an accident, which happened with regularity since we are dealing with animals and mostly unregulated traffic and many competing omnibus drivers, then it could take crews of men working with ropes and planks 2 days to rescue an omnibus that had slipped on the planking and into the quagmire, as one author puts it. A side effect of the omnibus's inability to transport more passengers per carriage was the high fare price, about 12 cents when the average working class men earned $1 per day. The high fare cost meant that many lower income dwellers still had to resort to old-fashioned walking for most of their commute. As time marched on, new innovations were introduced to horse-drawn mass transportation. Horse cars were similar to horse-drawn omnibuses, but with one important distinction. While omnibuses trampled across muddy streets, horse cars glided on smooth rails that reduced friction. As a result, while omnibuses could carry only 10 passengers with 3 horses, horse cars were able to carry 30 to 40 passengers with just a pair of horses. The horse car also had a roomier interior and more effective braking. The rails allowed the horse car to double the average speeds of the omnibus from 3 to a blistering 6 miles per hour. The horse car was superior to the omnibuses in every way, and it provided all this mass transportation goodness at less than half the cost of the omnibus fare, a mere 5 cents for a ticket. By the 1880s, the horse car made omnibuses obsolete, and nationwide there were more than 100,000 horses pulling more than 18,000 streetcars on 3,000 miles of track. Speaking personally, it's really hard to imagine how life was like back then, to have horse-drawn mass transportation be so ubiquitous in urban cities. I wonder what it smelled like. That was one of the problems with horse-drawn transportation, be it personal horse-drawn carriages to the large railed horse cars. Horses produce manure and urine, lots of it. Thousands of tons of manure and urine were littered on city streets from the hundreds of thousands of horses that were employed to truck urban dwellers around the city, and it was somebody's unfortunate job to clean it all up. Also, horses died in service, and in Chicago alone, 7,000 horse carcasses had to be carried away each year. The horse carcasses were also a breeding pool for diseases. With the horse carcasses and the tons of manure and urine, hot summers in the city must have been an all-out assault on the nose. Horse-drawn carriages also lacked insulation, heating, and air conditioning, making it a very uncomfortable ride in cold winters and hot summers. Given the obvious downsides to horse-drawn mass transportation, it was only a matter of time before inventive entrepreneurs made horse-drawn transportation obsolete. Cable cars powered by steam broilers were already shuffling urban dwellers in San Francisco in 1873, and by 1882, Chicago had its own large cable car system. Cable cars were much faster than horse-drawn mass transportation, going about 9 to 10 miles per hour, but more importantly, they could haul a lot more passengers than horse-drawn mass transportation. In 1893, in a single day in Chicago, cable cars hauled 700,000 passengers to and from the Columbian Exposition, and without a single drop of urine or manure, at least from the cable cars themselves. Thanks for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing to the Strange World of Econ channel. It's a great free way to support the channel so I can bring you guys even more interesting stories from the Strange World of Econ. Till next time.